let's talk a bit about what we're doing now, current programs. The Empower program is probably the one people might be most familiar with. They hear about it. But talk about, and I guess Diane's going to talk about this, right?
Yep.
Talk about our current, what are we doing with self-sufficiency today?
Sure. So our self-sufficiency today is really, you know, an additional component to the Empower Heat and Energy Assistance Grant. So as Bev stated before, in the past, it was simply looking at clients and determining whether they were eligible or ineligible. And so, you know, our funding went to those that were eligible, and, you know, it was the Band-Aid approach, just putting a temporary solution to their need. So now with self-sufficiency, we have our 3-track system, and that's actually embedded in the heat and energy application now, which is a very unique process that TrueNorth is kind of, you know, heading from the get-go. When someone is completing their application, we're already collecting data into what of the 3 tracks they fall into.
Can you explain the 3 tracks to people so they have an understanding of?
Sure. So Bev had alluded to this a little bit, but the 3 tracks, we have a number of our population that falls into what we would consider the crisis track. So they have just a very temporary need. And so our approach with them is to alleviate their crisis situation as quickly as possible to get them back on the right track.
This could be like heat's getting shut off, you know.
Yeah, heat's getting shut off.
There
else? Could be, you know, just an immediate, they may have just experienced a death in the family, a loss of job. Typically, these individuals are usually pretty independent and don't, you know, we don't see them year after year for assistance. They just have a very temporary need.
Something happened that was out of the ordinary in their lives. Okay.
Absolutely. And so we recognize that an intervention of intensive case management services is not necessary to alleviate their situation. They just need that quick fix.
That makes perfect sense. And that can happen to anybody.
Absolutely.
I've said before, you know, knock on wood, I haven't had need of services like the ones we offer yet in our lives, but, you know, everyone's probably two disasters away from needing help. So, okay. Sure. So that's the first track.
That's the first track. The opposite spectrum of that, we have folks falling into what we consider our extended services track. So these are individuals who have more long-term barriers, you know, more permanent barriers to their life to achieve what we would consider to be self-sufficient. Sure. So a lot of our aging population could be people with disabilities, cognitive impairments. And so our approach with them is to provide them the assistance that they need to keep their quality of life at a level, you know, that is best for them and to keep them safe. So we're still serving all of the population that's qualifying for services, but our interventions look very different. So right in the middle, we have the group that falls into our self-sufficiency category. And they typically have some pretty strong personal assets. They are typically the individuals that we see year after year coming to request assistance. And so the thought process is, you know, to intervene with some intensive case management services that occur in the client's home. So we're literally meeting the clients where they're at to help build upon and expand some of those assets that, that would help them be less dependent on public assistance. So
there are people who have a decent amount of self-motivation, but because of circumstances often beyond their control, they're kind of stuck in this place where they can't get out of it. They want to get out of this situation, but they can't quite make it.
Yes.
Talk a bit about this idea of being client-centered or strength-based as opposed to weakness-based.
Sure. Yeah, so the theory behind intervening our services with those that fall in the self-sufficiency category is that eventually through that relationship and mutual respect and rapport that we're able to build with them.
Ice. We all jumped. Okay.
That they are able to contribute more independently to their utility bills. So in turn, that money can then be reallocated to the vulnerable population and those in crisis. So we're being a lot more efficient with the money we're receiving through the grant and really allocating it to the population that needs it most. So our client-centered services is really putting our clients in the driver's seat of the case plan development. So we use data-driven intervention, which means we administer 3 different assessments.
Let's hold on, I'm just gonna, because that's probably gonna be... Okay, before we were interrupted by the diesel outside, we were talking about client-centered, self-sufficiency, and strength-based and stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, utilizing the intervention through administering 3 separate assessments, so that we're...
3 separate assessments?
Yes. Well, this is after they've been screened to be appropriate for self-sufficiency services. And then that's another great component of it is our self-sufficiency specialists reach out to those that are eligible.
Right.
And this is all voluntary.
Okay.
So we're literally calling people to say, hey, we have this really unique opportunity for you. So these are people who innately want to better their situation and make improvements. So, you know, there's no kind of caveat there. It's voluntary. They're invested from the get-go just based on what they know the outcomes could possibly be from participating.
So the 3 different assessments, this intrigues me.
Yes.
3 different assessments. Why 3 different assessments, and what does that tell our staff about the clients?
Sure. So the 3 different assessments really allow us to get to the root of being client-centered. So instead of developing a program that is very cookie cutter and kind of a one-size-fits-all approach, we want the goals and the discussions that we're having with our clients to mean something to them. So the assessments allow us to delve in a little bit deeper and to identify what immediate barriers they may be experiencing in their life. One of the assessments we do is called the Self-Sufficiency Matrix. And that's really the foundation and catalyst for our goal development and anything else that follows. And that helps immediately to identify their most immediate barriers, because although, you know, eventually we want them to be contributing toward their bills independently, that's kind of where the holistic approach comes into play, because they're coming to us through a need for heat and energy assistance, but oftentimes there are a lot of other barriers occurring in their life that will need remedied before we can actually sit down and have that conversation with them.
And we can either remedy those, or we can connect them with the people who can, or the agencies that can.
Yes, absolutely. So for Newaygo County especially, you know, TrueNorth can be the provider of a lot of those services that are needed, but self-sufficiency is now in 16 counties, and so it's really important for our self-sufficiency specialists to make those relationships with other partnerships and community members and stakeholders and the other counties that we're serving, so that they can refer the clients that they're working with.
Right. So that talks about our cross-collaboration efforts that are necessary once you get outside this county. Because, like you said, if they live in Newaygo County, chances are we provide the service that they need, more than likely.
Absolutely.
So they're working very closely with all of these other groups
they are.
and people and individuals. Right. Awesome.